Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that, I think we all think we know pretty well, the G rating for movies.
Right.
But you sent in a bunch of articles, some of your own notes on this.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, all notes 116, 20, 24, and do G-rated films even make sense anymore?
Yeah, those are some great articles.
It really got me thinking about, what does this even mean? G for general audiences.
Exactly.
Has it become too specific? I think it's a question worth exploring.
Absolutely. It's easy to assume these ratings are, kind of permanent, like they've always been there.
Yeah.
But, just thinking about the G rating, that has changed drastically since 1968.
Oh, yeah.
And to kind of get a sense of that, just think about the fact that 2001, A Space Odyssey originally had a G rating.
What?
I mean,
It's
seriously.
pretty mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. I mean, heck, even E.T. is PG now.
Right.
How did things change so much?
Well, back when 2001 was released, the G rating was much broader.
You could get away with showing a lot more in terms of content.
Yeah.
And it was almost like, thinking back to the Hays Code days,
Right.
where even hinting at certain things was, a huge no-no.
Yeah.
So, things were very different. But then the MPAA rating system itself started to, grow and expand. And
Yeah.
they introduced categories like PG-13 and NC-17.
Mhm.
And I think that's really when the G rating got kind of squeezed, forced into this little box.
Yeah, almost like for kids' movies, almost exclusively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Okay.
But it wasn't just the rating system alone.
Right.
I mean, we can't forget the huge influence of studios like Pixar.
Mm-hmm.
They really changed the game, I think, by making animated movies
Yeah.
that appealed to both kids and adults.
Yeah.
And, they normalized the idea of having mild adult humor in family films.
Yeah.
So PG became much more acceptable,
Right.
even expected.
So we have a G rating that's shrinking in scope and a growing acceptance of PG content for families.
Right.
What kind of an impact did that have on the G rating overall?
I think it had a huge impact.
Ugh.
And today, Disney and Pixar really dominate the G-rated landscape.
Right.
Just look at the numbers.
Okay.
17 of the top 20 highest grossing G-rated films are from those studios.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's pretty wild.
But in your notes, you specifically mentioned Toy Story 4.
Uh-huh.
It's the highest grossing G-rated film of all time.
Right.
But you almost hinted that it might be the last of its kind.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I think Toy Story 4 is almost an anomaly.
Okay.
When you compare its box office success to other G-rated films, even ones that were released around the same time,
Yeah.
the difference is gigantic.
Wow.
So it really shows how volatile the G-rated film market is.
Okay. So we've got a shrinking category
Yep.
dominated by only a few studios
Right.
and wild swings in box office performance.
Uh-huh.
So what's going on here? Why is the G rating kind of fading away?
Well, I think definitely the expanded rating system played a
Yeah.
part for sure,
Mm.
but there were other things going on too.
Okay.
The financial aspect is a big deal.
Yeah.
It's incredibly expensive to produce a G-rated film,
Right?
especially an animated one.
Yeah.
And, with the rise of streaming platforms,
Yeah.
the potential return on investment for a PG or PG-13 film is often a lot greater,
Yeah. That makes sense.
especially.
Especially when you think about how streaming has changed our viewing habits.
Right.
I mean, when you're on Netflix or Hulu, are you specifically looking for G-rated films?
That's a really good question, and it gets right to the heart of why the G rating is struggling.
Yeah.
Streaming has really personalized our entertainment experience.
Right.
We're fragmenting the audience,
Mhm.
and studios are able to target specific groups
Okay.
so that, that broad general audience appeal
Right.
that used to define the G rating isn't as important anymore. It's less about appealing to everyone
Uh-huh.
and more about appealing to the right people.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of appealing to the right people, you included that article, do G-rated films even make sense anymore?
Yeah.
That title really got me thinking.
It's a provocative one, right?
It is.
And, the author really argues that the idea of a general audience,
Yeah,
at least in the way that the original G rating was intended,
right.
might not actually exist anymore.
Wow.
And they make some pretty good points.
Okay, so are they saying that the G rating is like out of date?
No.
Like a rotary phone?
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Okay.
But they definitely suggest that,
Right.
it's a concept that is struggling to stay relevant.
Okay.
Think about it.
Yeah.
We have so many different, streaming services now.
Right.
All these niche interests.
Yeah.
And just the expectations for entertainment have changed so much.
It's true. It's true. It used to be like you'd see that G rating and you'd be like, oh, okay, perfect. The whole family can watch this.
Exactly.
But now it feels like it's almost ironic.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be this, broad category, this inclusive category. But really, it's become incredibly specific.
Yeah.
Almost exclusively children's film.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the G rating has become the opposite of general.
Right.
And I think to really highlight how much things have changed, the article points out some of these, what's it called, the weirdest G-rated films.
Okay, like
Beyond and Back, Dark
mhm.
Star, even the Andromeda Strain.
Wow. I mean, those...
These days, those would almost certainly be PG-13,
Yeah.
maybe even R-rated.
Okay, so I'm starting to get it. Times change, audiences change,
Right.
and the G rating hasn't quite caught up.
Exactly.
But what about the financial side of all of this?
Right.
You talked about how expensive these G-rated productions are.
Yeah.
How does that play into all of this?
Well, I think just from a studio's perspective,
Yeah.
they're putting in a lot of money.
Right.
They want to see a return.
Yeah, of course.
And, especially for animated films,
right.
where they could have a much broader appeal.
Yeah.
PG rating often just makes more sense financially.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Okay.
But let's kind of recap for a second.
Yeah.
We've talked about how the G rating has kind of evolved
Right.
from this broad category to something much narrower.
Uh-huh.
How Disney and Pixar pretty much dominate the landscape now.
Right.
And then the financial realities of actually making one of these G-rated films, especially with streaming, changing everything.
Exactly. All these things are really interconnected.
Yeah.
It creates a very complicated situation.
It does. So going back to the big question here.
Yeah.
What is the future of the G rating?
Right.
I mean, is it just going to kind of fade away completely?
Yeah.
Or is there some way for it to, adapt, stay relevant in this new world of, niche audiences and all these streaming services?
That is the big question. And unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
But, we can look at the trends.
Yeah.
We can look at these challenges. And I think, the big thing is thinking about the implications of all of this.
Right.
For the filmmakers, for the studios.
Yeah.
And maybe even more importantly, for the audience.
Yeah, I mean, especially when we're talking about a rating that's supposed to be for general audiences.
Right.
Shouldn't we be thinking about what audiences actually want?
Yeah, for sure.
And then what about the filmmakers?
Mm-hmm.
Does having to cater to a smaller and smaller G-rated audience,
Right. Yeah.
does that limit the kinds of stories that they can tell?
Those are all really important questions.
They are.
And it all kind of feeds into a bigger conversation about the role that these ratings play in shaping the content that we watch.
It's fascinating. I gotta say, this whole deep dive has really got me questioning everything I thought I knew about movie ratings.
Right.
It's it's not just some random letter you slap on a poster.
Yeah.
It actually says a lot about, what we as a society value, what we're afraid of, what we think is okay to watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it really highlights how, these ratings aren't just set in stone.
Right.
They're constantly evolving as our culture changes, as expectations for entertainment change.
Well, and when a rating like G, when it starts to lose its meaning, it really makes you think, what does that say about us?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I keep thinking back to all those articles you sent me and that point about Toy Story 4,
Right.
Maybe that's a turning point.
Yeah.
Because if even a movie that big, can't really break through, what does that mean for, other filmmakers who are trying to make movies that fit into that G rating?
It definitely raises some questions about, how much money these movies can make.
Right.
Especially for these studios that need to see a big return on their investment.
And then what does that mean for the audience?
Right.
Especially kids, they're the main audience for G-rated films.
Yeah, if the G rating keeps shrinking,
right,
does that mean we'll get fewer stories?
Yeah.
Fewer types of characters?
Yeah, and it makes me think about representation, diversity.
Yeah, absolutely.
If G becomes even more specific,
right,
whose stories are we going to hear?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question.
And it makes me wonder, what about you listening?
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you even look for G-rated films?
Right.
Why or why not? Has streaming, has that changed what you watch?
Right. Has it changed how you decide what to watch?
Yeah, and the types of movies you choose.
Yeah, because it's fascinating to think about how, you know, all of our individual choices actually end up contributing to these bigger trends in the industry.
It's true.
Every time we click on a movie, we're kind of voting for the kinds of stories we want to see more of.
I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We really unpacked this whole G rating thing.
Yeah.
How it's changed over time, what challenges it's facing.
Yeah.
And I think we've even come up with some new questions.
Absolutely.
It's been a really eye-opening deep dive for me.
It has for me, too.
And I think, this conversation about the G rating, it's not over.
Not at all.
And to everyone listening, thanks for coming along with us on this journey into this curious world of the G rating. Yeah. We hope you found it, at least a little bit interesting.
Interesting and thought-provoking, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Until next time, happy watching.